Hey BookTube, this is Friday Reads. I'm Jen and I talk about audiobooks. And I have a couple of things to tell you about with regard to last week, and then there are a couple of things that I'm reading on into next week. So let me just tell you about the stuff I've finished. I have to start out by saying that there were 3 books that I read. One was a 1-star book. Actually, that is a 1/10 of a star, rounded up to 1 because it was so awful. One is a 2-star book and one is a 4-star book. So I'm going to start with the worst of the bunch, which is The Light We Lost by Jill Santopoulos. It was narrated on audio by the author, and I would have given this 0 stars if I could. In fact, I may just go back and do that. You know, it was that bad. It was so bad. I was so angry when I got to the end of this book that had I had the physical book, I would have probably thrown it across the room, picked it up, gone outside, stomped on it in the rain, gotten it wet, and then picked it up and set it on fire. That is how much I hated this book. This book has 5-star ratings on Goodreads. It is billed as a romance and a tearjerker. And apparently it is supposed to, you know, fill you with all kinds of angst, and it's women's fiction, and it has a very literary fiction feel to it. 0 plot. It's about a woman who, she meets a guy on 9/11, they're in college together, and then they have a relationship, they break up, and she spends the entire rest of the book moving on with her life, but comparing everything in it to him. You know, her next boyfriend is compared to him. Her next fiance is compared to him. Her husband is compared to him. Her children, she compares every experience that she has with her children and her husband with this guy. It never ends. He drops in and out of her life. And then by the end of the book, the way it ends is so emotionally manipulative. It is such a plot device. It just made me so angry. And then the absolute last little part of the book, it's just ridiculous. I was livid by the time I got to the end of this book. Also, I will say that the narration by the author was awful. She did herself no favors by narrating this book herself. She sounded like a high school kid standing up in class to read. It was terrible. It was terrible. And so, you know, no. I would have given the narration very low marks anyway, had this been any other book, but as it was, I hated this book. And I buddy read this with Lisa from Books and Smiles. And you know what? We both hated it. I got like 55% of the way through or so, and I switched from the narration to the ebook. And I had gotten it from Audible, and I returned it to Audible, which, by the way, you can do. If you don't like a book or you don't like the narration or you have a problem with it on some level, you can return it to Audible. They'll give you a credit so you can get a different book. Thank goodness that they do that, because boy, I couldn't do that fast enough with this book. I don't get all these high ratings for it. This character was just so frustrating and so angsty and so whiny, and I just had no patience for it. So anyway, less than a star. And if you've read this book, you probably should tell me in comments so I can talk to you and you can point out the good points of this book. But as it was, I hated it. I hated it. It was slow. It was awful. I hated the characters, and it had a bad ending. And it was a total waste of time. Okay, the next book I read that was a little higher than that was Fallen Heir. This is book 4 in the Royals series by Erin Watt. Erin Watt is 2 people whose names I can't remember. I'll put them on the screen. But this is book 4 in a series, so it follows one of the side characters, and from the first 3 books. The Royals refers to a family of 5 brothers whose dad runs an aviation company, which I think he either builds or flies or both small, like private jets. So they have tons of money. They're very, very wealthy. So the book starts out with this 3rd brother, and in the past, he's always been kind of the you know, the bright spot in all of the drama. He is kind of happy-go-lucky. He's a good guy. He's fun. He's just been he's a good friend. No, they just didn't do him any favors in this book. I'll tell you what, it was such lazy writing because they took this character and just turned him into a self-destructive machine. He was ADD, or he is ADD. And so he knows he needs to expend a lot of energy. And previously he dealt with that by taking pills. But he has put that behind him. And now he does street fighting, which his family does not approve of. And also he does alcohol, which, you know, I don't know if he's an alcoholic, but he does not handle alcohol well. So the book starts out with him having a relationship with his teacher. And this girl walks in, and so she walks in on them and then quickly runs away and says, I didn't see anything. He chases her down later just to make sure she won't say anything, and then decides he likes her. And so he starts pursuing her. Okay, what girl in her right mind would consider any kind of a relationship with this guy that she's walked in on, who's having, you know, with his teacher? Seriously? And where are the people in this guy's life that will come in and help him out? Like, where's his dad, his older brother, his adopted sister? Like, where are they? Why aren't they coming in and shaking him and going, what are you doing? And that's the other thing about it. Throughout this book, this character will stop and go, that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. Why didn't I realize that was stupid? I need to do this instead. I need to do this instead. And yet, he makes bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. After a while, I just kind of got tired of it. Now, it's an engaging book, and it's trashy soap opera drama. So, you know, you pay attention because you can't, it's like a car wreck. You can't take your eyes off of it. But, you know, it just didn't measure up to the previous 3 books. And I'm sad about that because I think that these authors didn't treat this character well. And I think they're going to write a 5th book that resolves this story, because the story ends on a cliffhanger, a big cliffhanger. And I hope that they redeem him somehow, because, boy, they have set him up to be a really kind of joke of a character. I mean, he's just sad. He's just sad. So, yeah, there's a lot more going on with the drama of that book, but I ended up giving it 2 stars, and that's a solid 2 stars. Yeah, it wasn't that great. So if you're going to continue on with the series, what I would suggest is wait for the 5th book to come out and then read books 4 and 5, or just marathon the series, because it's going to be a whole lot better for you. And that's trusting that the last book is something that the authors, they take and redeem the series with it, or at least redeem the 4th book. Okay, and then I finished the Stone Sky last night by N.K. Jemison, or actually it was yesterday. This was narrated on audio by Robin Miles, and she is spectacular. Robin Miles gets 100 out of 5 stars from me. She is that amazing. She did accents for each character to distinguish them. Each one had such a unique personality, and it wasn't because of the book, the way they were written, as much as it was the way that she narrated them. She captured the emotion of the book, the tone of the book, the adventure, the drama, the sadness, you know, all of it. She just, oh my gosh, she was so good. I really do need to find more things that she has narrated, because she's just that good as a narrator. Now, the book didn't overly impress me. This is book 3 in the Broken Earth series, so it's the conclusion. And it was a good conclusion, and it wrapped up all the loose ends, and it brought everything to an ending really nicely. I mean, it concluded really nicely. It explained a lot of things that had been previously either vague or ambiguous in the story, and it's a hard story to follow. I wish that I had had bigger chunks of time where I could have sat and listened. This would have been the perfect book to like drive a long distance with, because you really needed to be able to focus on the details. It jumps around a lot. It's the story of a woman and her daughter, and the world that they live in, they call it an Earth, but it's an Earth that is affected greatly by geology and the movement of tectonic plates and volcanoes and geological events. And so some of the characters are able to influence those events and manipulate the Earth that way. And so you have that going on, and that's really more of the fantasy part of it, and then the whole rock thing is all of the sci-fi portion of it, or that kind of flavor. So it was good. It had a lot of drama, and I did like the way that it built up to the ending, and I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 stars. I think that I had a little higher expectation. I thought it was really going to blow me out of the water, but that, like I say, is because of the way it's written, which is a unique format in the way that Jemison takes different points of views, and she narrates from those, or she writes from those perspectives. One of those is a second person's perspective, and you're not exactly sure, you're pretty sure, but not completely sure who is speaking. And anyway, good book. Highly recommend the series. It's adult, it's fantasy, sci-fi, and I really enjoyed it. There were a lot of sci-fi elements that got brought out in this last book, and that was really nice because you began to understand how this place got to be the way it was. And so it was as much background and filling in as it was concluding. So really, really good story. Okay, so then I picked up and am currently reading on my iPod. I'm listening to Lost and Found Sisters by Jill Shalvis. This is Jill Shalvis's most recent book. It's narrated by Karen White, and actually after I finished The Light We Lost, I tweeted, please, Jill Shalvis and Karen White, rescue me from this horrible book that I just finished. I'm hoping you guys can, redeem my whole reading life with this, and it is so good. It is really going more towards women's fiction, and Jill Shalvis is pretty much of a classic romance writer, but it has her tone, her flavor, her style, and Karen White is so perfect for interpreting that, for, relating that, just in terms of an audio experience. So yeah, I'm loving that. And it's about a woman who is a sous chef in LA, and she has an attorney come to her and say, you've inherited something. And she's like, huh? And it's a little bit of a mystery at first, and the synopsis really doesn't tell you more than that, so I won't tell you anymore so as not to spoil it, but I can tell you that there are some great side characters, there's a great romance going on, and it happens early on. I have a little less than halfway to go on it, and I'm just thoroughly enjoying it. I can tell that this is going to be probably a 4-star book. So I picked up that. And then I also picked up Avalon. This is by Mindee Arnett. It has been sitting on my shelf for a long time. I'm on page 18. Chapter 2. It has been described as The Fast and the Furious in Space, and it is YA. And it's just a departure from the other stuff I've been reading lately, which is kind of nice. I think it's going to be a little lighter, a little more fun. YA characters, and it's going to go fast, I think. So it's just a duology. The sequel is called Polaris, and it's not available on audio, or I would be listening to it. And that is my weekend. I hope you are having a great weekend. It is very rainy and cool here for September. Usually it's pretty hot here where I live, and we are getting the remnants of Hurricane Harvey. So really dreary and rainy and chilly, and altogether I would prefer sunny skies. I think everybody would, but anyway, I hope that this finds you in a good spot. Hurricane Harvey has really done so much damage, and if you've been able to participate and volunteer in helping with that, then my hat is off to you. I just read story after story after story of people who have stepped up just to lend a hand, and I think that is an amazing thing. It makes me thank God for everyone who's done that. And in fact, I'm hoping I can. I'm an extreme couponer, so I have a stockpile in my garage that I'm hoping I can pull, quite a bit from and then send down there. So anyway, have a great weekend. That's it for now for me, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.